Colonel Mixon has several operational deployments in support of the global war on terrorism, including 4 in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom, 2 in support of Operation Enduring Freedom, and 1 in support of Operation Inherent Resolve. Colonel Mixon is a real combat veteran, combat soldier. Colonel Mixon has earned numerous awards and decorations for his service, including the Bronze Star Medal and the Defense Meritorious Medal, Service Medal. He has also earned the Ranger Tab, the Master Parachutist Badge, the Assault Badge, and Expert Infantryman Badge. Colonel Mixon holds a master's degree from the Army College and North Dakota State and a bachelor's degree from UNC Pembroke. He is married with 2 children. Can we please give Colonel Mixon a round of applause?
All right, good morning, everyone. Hope everyone's doing well. And that is true. I did get a master's degree from North Dakota State University. Has anyone ever lived up there?
No.
You will never forget it if you do. I was up there about 13 months, and I think the coldest it got was like 42, 43 below zero. And I tried to drive from Fargo to Bismarck, North Dakota one night. My wife was in Atlanta. She refused to move up there for the first 6 months. And, they put the arms down if you've ever been up there on the interstate I-29. And if they're up, you can drive, but you're risking a little bit, because if you get out there and you have a flat tire, for those, look at you, Mr. Strauss, probably been up there. If you have a flat tire or blowout or something, you're going to be in trouble. You can't warm up enough. So it's great to see everyone here. I know there's too many distinguished visitors to thank everyone, but just thanks everyone for being here. General Anderson would have probably been here, the senior commander, 18 Airborne Corps, but he's actually in Key West right now on business. So he's traveling back today, or I'm sure he would have stopped in. To start, thank you for attending the Regional Land Use Advisory Commission and for your support of our military community. Your partnership and advocacy strengthens readiness and enhances our quality of life, and we're deeply grateful for your commitments. Since 1991, state and federal agencies as well as nonprofit partners have worked together to promote compatible growth and conservation of critical environmental resources around Fort Bragg and Camp McCall's borders. The Fort Bragg Garrison's agreement with the RLUAC to provide reviews of land use development proposals within 5 miles of the installation has been key in protecting against non-compatible land use and encroachment. The RLUAC's primary value to us on Bragg is ensuring that our interests are credibly represented and considered when our local government partners are presented with land use and developmental proposals that can impact our mission. Just pause there 1 second. When in this job as the garrison commander, I'm constantly looking inside of our fence line, for at least initially, until we started looking at the long range plan. Where are we going as an installation? It's so important. As we look 5 years out right now, we have a 5-year plan. We have lines of effort and multiple objectives on things we're going to do, not only inside the installation, but in conjunction with our partners surrounding. So this is so important, the RLUAC. I mean, truly from the bottom of my heart, this is so important. I've talked to my team on some of the things you all do with this committee, and it's super important to our interests and where we are going. Recently, we've had some major cases come through that could have negatively impacted our aviation operations, including a proposal to build an asphalt plant in a location that would have made it unsafe for aircraft to land at Pope Field in bad weather due to the height of plant infrastructure. You can think about that just for 1 second. Our airfield, talking to the 3-star Donahue and now General Anderson, is my number one priority. That is my number one priority here on Bragg. That airfield, we have to island ourselves when it comes to that airfield, because most of the people in this room should know that, if there's a contingency anywhere in the world, they're calling here, they're calling to Fort Bragg. So just think about how important that is, that, with just that one situation, how that could have affected our ability to power project. So we're super, we're super grateful for what this team does. Another big case was a proposed rezoning immediately adjacent to Camp McCall Airfield that would have allowed structures of unlimited height to be built just 1,800 feet for runway 422. So McCall is, when you look at McCall, it's way out on our western side. Most of you know that. And it's, in terms of power projection, it's not what we consider power projection, but it is super important to our special operations forces who operate out there quite a bit. We just signed some agreements with some of our other National Mission Force elements to do more stuff out there at McCall. So that is another super important place for us here on the installation. That will remain important. RLUAC also helps us work with local governments to modify or add conditions to development applications that would otherwise negatively impact safety or training capabilities. I'm going to go ahead and just kind of close out here, but as you can see, the RLUAC is doing great things for us, and we look forward to continuing this partnership. I'd like to thank Mayor Anthony and the RLUAC board for inviting me to this meeting, and I'll turn it back over to you, Mayor Anthony. But thank you, everyone, for this. This is my first in-person time coming to this, and I know it's super important, so I hope to come back as much as possible from here. Thanks.
Thank you, Colonel Mixon. As you can see, this room is filled with some heavy hitters. So thank you all for coming out. I would like to acknowledge a few of them, and if I miss anyone, please remind me at the end. We have our House members, Representative Mike Colvin, Representative Diane Wheatley. It's okay, you can give me applause. It's all, these are good people. These are the people who fight for us every day, so absolutely. Representative Francis Jackson, Representative Joseph Pike, and are there any other from our House members here? I am so sorry about that, Senator Burton. Oh, I hadn't got to you yet. I was just doing the House first, but you're on here. So we'll start with you one more time, Senator Jim Burton. Absolutely. I'd like to also recognize NCDMVA Chief Deputy Secretary Sam Meltzer and our NCMAC Interim Chairman David Hayden. We also have several members from our Cumberland County municipal government, Mayor Mitch Colvin, our esteemed mayor in the back from Hope Mills, Jesse Bellflowers. Sorry, Jesse. We have our Cumberland County members here. Our chairman is Chairman Devier is here. Vice Chairman Pavan Patel is here. And we have Mayor Pro Tem Kathy Jensen in the back. Do not be modest. Let us know where you are. Thank you. I'd also like to recognize our RLUAC board, our Vice Chairman, Dr. Jerry Newton, Secretary, Mr. Mark Locklear, and I would like for the rest of our board members to please stand. Awesome. So we will now move on to our agenda item. Without presentations, I would like to introduce our Executive Director, Mr. Von.
For those who are not very well oriented towards RLUAC, just to give you some information about the organization, what we do, how we're organized, how we function. And so RLUAC began back in 1991. It came out of a recommendation from a joint land use study that Fort Bragg and Pope Air Force Base did back in the late 80s, early 90s. And one of the things they found is lacking in this region, given its size, was a cohesive organization to work between Fort Bragg and the counties and municipalities around it to bring these types of issues that Colonel Mixon mentioned to the fore, to make sure there was a forum for doing that in the region. There was a brief hiatus. It then reemerged after a 2003 joint land use study and was formally established in 2005 as a statutory interlocal cooperation organization between all the local government members, as well as Fort Bragg and a number of partner organizations. And then at the conclusion of the last joint land use study in 2020, 2021, we updated the bylaws to provide some new structure, some new organizational management framework for the organization to recognize its growth and modernization and maturity as a regional organization. Our core mission, number one, promoting land use compatibility in the area around Fort Bragg and Camp McCall, fostering communication in venues such as this between Fort Bragg and our local government partners, educating the community as we can. I believe this presentation actually will be up on the county's website and TV channel as well. So this would be an opportunity for people to learn more about our organization. Doing our statutory land use case reviews, there is a general statute that requires certain land use and zoning decisions to be reviewed by the installation. There's an agreement between Fort Bragg and RLUAC to do that. And providing assistance to our members and local governments as they work through things like comprehensive planning efforts, working on updates to their zoning ordinances. We work with them as things come up that they need assistance with. And sometimes when they don't ask, we provide that assistance as well. Membership structure, 7 counties, 15 municipalities, is a very large region. Fort Bragg Garrison, it is a statutory and enduring member of RLUAC in accordance with the bylaws. We also have a number of partner organizations ranging from Fish and Wildlife, the North Carolina Wildlife Resources Commission, the Three Rivers Land Trust, Sustainable Sandhills, Department of Military and Veterans Affairs. We could go on and on and on about all the entities that we work with throughout the state and throughout the region. And we also have some individual associate members, gentlemen like Mr. Glenn Quilliman here, General Aycock, who have some association with Fort Bragg and continue to work with RLUAC past the time that they left the military service or working with the installation. Our governance, we're led by a 9-member board of directors. There's 6 local government seats on the board, 3 at-large seats. They serve 2-year terms, no more than 3 consecutive. We also have some ex officio members. General Aycock's an ex officio member. Mr. Oldham's ex officio member appointed by the chair. We have quarterly board meetings, essentially getting ready for our quarterly membership meetings such as this. And they recommend actions to take to the full membership, whether it be budget, nominations for upcoming elections, what have you. They make those recommendations and explore other issues that we need to work on together as an organization. And our chairman, or chairwoman in this case, is responsible for leading the executive and nominating committees. She appoints standing and ad hoc committees and appoints the ex officio members. Administration and Finance, I serve as an executive director. We have a contract with a company I work for as a management organization to do this work. We also do have a deputy executive director as well. We contract with the Mid-Carolina Council of Governments as our fiscal agent, so thank you very much, Samantha, and your organization for assisting with our finances over the years. And we have 2 primary funding sources. One, we have membership dues. We get about 25% of our budget from that, and the rest of our budget primarily comes through our intergovernmental support agreement with Fort Bragg. Major organizational successes. We completed a 4th joint land use study for Fort Bragg in the region in 2018, led through implementation work through 2021, doing work in all of the local government communities to bring more awareness of the issues that were identified in the joint land use study. We've developed a compatible use ordinance toolbox that could be used by local governments to strengthen their zoning ordinances for military land use compatibility. We also developed individual comprehensive plan supplements that local governments could adopt as well. Over the years, RLUAC has worked with its partners, previously the Sandhills Area Land Trust, now Three Rivers Land Trust, the Nature Conservancy, others, to support the preservation of over 30,000 acres of land for wildlife habitat, primarily oriented towards the red-cockaded woodpecker. We've expanded our partnerships with our outside organizations, and we've strengthened the fiscal position of RLUAC through the IGSA with Fort Bragg. When we came on in 2021 to assume leadership and management of the organization, RLUAC had exactly $0 in the bank. And we're in a considerably better financial position today. Going back to the RCW, red-cockaded woodpecker, this is just a page from the joint land use study showing the active foraging areas for those at that time. One of the great successes, again, through the partnerships in the region between Fort Bragg and the organizations that are supporting it, have conserved that land, and that led to the downlisting of the red-cockaded woodpecker earlier this year. And here we see a map of where a lot of that managed land is for RCW habitat. Land use compatibility reviews, another core part of the mission. So we provide those statutory reviews on behalf of the installation. The service extends beyond just zoning changes. Anything that we get sent, we review for compatibility. That could be anything from a subdivision to a land use plan being considered for adoption. The reviews are coordinated with the Fort Bragg Garrison through the Master Planning Division. We also have a land use committee that we work with, comprised of of RLUAC members to explore these issues. And we make non-binding recommendations to our local government partners when we review these cases. RLUAC is not a regulatory organization. Fort Bragg, RLUAC cannot tell a local government what to do. It can make any decision that it likes to. We like for it to follow our recommendations, but we do not mandate or require anything. We provide technical, accurate information and let local governments know what the implications of a zoning decision that they make could be. Could this be harmful to Fort Bragg? Could it provide some environmental impacts that might negatively impact some threatened and endangered species around the installation? And to do our land use reviews, we primarily rely on what we call the compatible use rating system. So all land within 5 miles of Fort Bragg is either identified as being critical or important to protect, or it's not classified. Those can be things like, again, red cockaded woodpecker habitat, potential zones associated with one of the airfields of the installation, high noise areas, other types of military impacts that are associated with military training and operations on the installation. We're exploring options to update that on a more regular basis. We did it last through the joint land use study. It takes a lot of effort to do that. It takes a lot of outreach because when we change the criteria, when we add new information to it, we need to make sure that's communicated effectively to all our local governments, and from them to their property owner, to the residents, to developers working in those communities, so they can understand what the impacts are and where it is, good to develop and where areas that might have a negative impact on Fort Bragg. We also have been partnering with the North Carolina Department of Commerce for a number of years now to host this data online. You can go to the sandhillsgis.com website. You can actually look at this information, identify the areas that are critical and important to protect around Fort Bragg. And so this is what that map looks like. So the light green areas are the areas that are important to protect. The dark green areas are those areas that are of critical importance to protect. And here again, some of those issues that feature into that compatibility rating system. So land use compatibility challenges, some of the top things we see these days, the threats to the aviation mission at Fort Bragg, that has really been at the forefront over the last few years. We're getting constrained in developable land in some of our urban areas. Some of our urban areas happen to intersect pretty directly with some of our aviation facilities at Fort Bragg, so we're experiencing some challenges with that. The protection of the off-installation UAS corridor between Camp McCall and the training areas on Fort Bragg is a big deal. It's over in western Hoke County. We still see residential growth encroaching into rural areas as infrastructure is extended, as roads are wide, and as water and sewer lines are extended. Some of these areas where the Army could train, make a lot of noise, not have to really worry about there being neighbors, farms and forests. Now we see subdivisions, houses popping up. And it's been a long time since BRAC was really mentioned by Congress, and that was the last time, or that was really an impetus in getting RLUAC back up and running as a formal organization, because there were perceived threats to the installation. We saw encroachment coming. We still had environmental issues related to RCWs. And when that's not at the forefront, sometimes these compatible land use issues aren't as important or aren't given the same kind of credence as they are when the mission might be threatened. Just to go back to one of the issues that there's an example that Colonel Mixon mentioned earlier. And so this is the asphalt plant. You can see the proximity where that was proposed in relationship to Pope Field there. It was not going to be particularly tall. It's only 80 or 90 feet tall, but the way that they do the terminal procedures for the aircraft, doing instrument landings at night in bad weather, even something of that relatively short height could pose an issue because of the minimum separation they have to have from structures when they're flying an instrument pattern. And the rezoning that he mentioned as well, outline McCall Army Airfield, just 1,800 feet off the center line. Aircraft, if there's an issue when they're landing, taking off, need to be able to maneuver pretty quickly. And if you build something particularly tall, that close to a runway, even if it's to the side of it, you can have issues. And so, we're really trying to work with local governments to help them educate them. We've been working with, this is over in Richmond County, actually, working with them to do some airport overlay zoning around, in the area around McCall Army Airfield, so that they can more confidently be able to have some of the economic development they want to have in the area, but not do something that might endanger the mission. Mentioned our training airspace in Fort Bragg extends region-wide. We have a mandate within 5 miles to review zoning matters, the airspace, things where telecommunications towers, broadcast antenna, et cetera, could go that might interfere with military training and operations, extend across the Sandhills region, essentially, over into the UARES. These are local low-level flight patterns. These are areas, some of those areas have pretty frequent overflights by aircraft doing airdrops coming in and out of the drop zones at Fort Bragg. That's that UAS corridor, flying between McCall Army Airfield and the restricted airspace on Fort Bragg. And just an example, this is back in 2016 when we were getting the last joint land use study ready. You can see areas in purple there where we've had just between 2008 and 2016, the changes in residential growth patterns going out into areas like in Eastern Hope County, going out with 401, up in Harnett County, growing up in the area that's been developing up there in Eastern Moore County and Western Harnett County as well, along the corridor between Southern Pines area and Fort Bragg. So we're seeing that rural growth going into those areas and trying to help educate local governments about the proper places where most beneficial develop, because we certainly need the economic development. We need the housing for people in the region. There are just areas that are better to do that versus others. So moving forward, exploring options for additional funding to support new initiatives. There are some studies that we'd like to do. The Office of Local Defense Community Cooperation has some programs that we'd like to explore doing here, such as doing a military installation readiness review, expanding our education and outreach efforts, having more opportunities, particularly for local government officials, planners in our region. We've done some planner training before, helping them understand the issues at hand, learning about the mission of Fort Bragg so that they can help identify issues with development before it gets to the stage where a local government council is having to vote on it. Expanding our relationships with our partner organizations, maintaining and again, improving the compatible use rating system to make sure it's reflective of the most current mission data from Fort Bragg, and exploring opportunities to do new regional planning studies. We've actually been engaging pretty heavily with some of our regional partners in recent years. Zach was on the committee working on the Moore County Land Use Plan. We, of course, interfaced with Harnett County recently with Southern Pines when they were working on their land use plan. And so we've had a lot of great success with that, and really appreciate the partnerships that we have with our local governments that allow us to come in and allow us to bring that technical assistance to them and allow us to help them identify potential growth issues related to Fort Bragg and grow in a compatible manner. So, more information, we have a great website, www.RLUAC.com. If you'd like to go on there, we have a lot of links to this information. We keep some statistics. I think Zach's going to tell you about some of that here in a minute. Links to information about red-cockaded woodpeckers, military training mission at Fort Bragg, links to some of our partner organizations in the region. So please visit that. We have meeting notices as well on there. We have an email list if you'd like to join up. We'll keep you apprised of meetings if you're not already getting those notices. And that's all that I have. You turn it over to Al Aycock.
You can have all the organizations and processes you want to have, but if you don't have great people doing things, those processes will lag and those organizations will fail. I want to talk to you just a little bit about, as we're moving to 35 years old, 35 years old, this place is good. I want to talk a little bit about that because that was the time that our first joint land use study was done. It's only right to consider how we have an incredible past, how we have a successful future, and what the possibilities of our future hold. Because there are some possibilities out there that are affected outside of us, we have no control over, that may impact us. So for just a moment, I want you to think about what the greater Sand looked like if then Camp Bragg had closed after World War I. That gets you to a starting point. So while trying to predict that kind of stuff is a what-if game, the odds are that the Sandhills would have remained largely agricultural, since that was a predominant industry in the region, and since North Carolina has a large amount of agriculture, still our number one industry. The population and business development would have probably been focused on supporting agriculture, and we wouldn't have what you see around us right now. that what-if closure scenario almost happened. After World War I, Fort Bragg was on the list to be considered to close in the massive post-war closings after World War I. Only a visit by the Secretary of War, John Weeks, ensured that the installation was going to remain open as an artillery training center. So Brigadier General Albert Boley has a school named after him here, changed the Secretary's mind and convinced him of the value of the post as an artillery training test area. Camp Bragg would become Fort Bragg, and later it would become the test bed and training center for the airborne operations as we entered World War II. And that changed the whole trajectory of Fort Bragg. It's now the Army's largest post. It's been joined by Army Special Forces, and we know Fort Bragg is the home of the Army's Airborne and Special Operations Forces, where the elite units are ready to deploy to war immediately. As the saying goes, when the president dials 911, it rings at Fort Bragg. I didn't just make that up, in case y'all wonder. That brings us to today, though. The economic impact of Fort Bragg last reported at more than $8 billion a year. That's $8 billion a year. That's a little factoid you ought to write down for your speeches when you give them too, okay? One of the many reasons for this significant economic impact are all the great people in this room and your predecessors. Let's give them credit also. Everyone involved in the RLUAC and the Sandhills since 1991, when that first joint land use study was done, has demonstrated vision and great determination that's necessary to balance the military mission with the local needs for compatible economic development. So here's another consideration that brings us full circle back to the value of a regional land use advisory commission. Along the way, particularly in the early 60s, many bases and facilities had been built over time and had expanded for the active Army, the National Guard, and the Army Reserve. They were small, some were medium, some were large, but we had a lot of bases, and we had a lot that were excess to the needs of the United States in that era. In 1961, 73 military installations were closed by DOD. They just made the decision to close them. No community input. 64, another 26 were closed. A year later, in 65, 95 military sites were shut down. In 73, another 224 closures were announced. And because of the controversy and the local impact of these closures, the 1983 Grace Commission, that was focused on finding federal cost savings, recommended a special commission be formed to consider future base closures. That led to Public Law 100-526, formalizing independent base closure commissions that would put a little bit of community input into it. After Secretary of Defense Carlucci closed or realigned 49 military sites and more than 50 excess housing sites in 1988, Congress passed another law. You're probably more familiar with this law. It's the Defense Base Realignment Closure Act of 1990. You know it by a short name, BRAC, which tells you all the four-letter words weren't taken, okay? This law set up a formal process that gave local communities more of a voice in stating how they supported military readiness and the value of that military installation to them. The first test of this new process happened 1 year later in 1991, when 39 military sites were either closed or realigned. There's likely a direct correlation to that first BRAC in 1991 with the joint land use study that happened here. There were additional BRAC processes in 1993, 1995, and most of you remember the massive BRAC process in 2005 that lasted all the way to the end of 2011. I got to play a part in that from the aspect of I was at Fort Bragg when it was announced, and we saw the massive changes coming that we did not expect. We actually gained during that BRAC as opposed to losing, and I helped the command move from MCOM, moved from Washington, D.C. all the way over to San Antonio, and then I came back and I got the privilege of closing out BRAC and making sure everybody did all the things that they wanted to do. It's an important process for what we do and what we have here, but it has now balanced that military value with the local community's needs for that compatible development and economic well-being input. One of the keys to protecting the military value of Fort Bragg and other military installations across the state has been the North Carolina law, which allows installation commanders to comment on zoning and construction, which was well covered before. That law has been critical to us. This is where our RLUAC has been essential in maintaining the high level of coordination and cooperation between local communities and Fort Bragg. The scope of the work done has been incredible and complex. I'm just going to give you a few numbers. They're on the website too. In 2022, the RLUAC reviewed 466 cases and commented on 57. In 23, 542 cases and made comments on 60. So far in 2025, our RLUAC has reviewed 324 cases with 42 comments. This is a working board. This isn't a board that meets and has minutes and says, this is what we should do. This is a board that actually sits and reads and looks and makes comments that are directly impactful to the folks who work at every one of our counties, every one of our cities in our area. This RLUAC is used as a model by the Department of Defense when other communities seek guidance from DoD, specifically the Office of Local Defense Community Cooperation. We're the longest running RLUAC in the United States. Everyone here has had a role in building and maintaining that reputation. Without the great work done by the state of North Carolina, all 7 counties, and all the multiple cities actively supporting this RLUAC, the missions at Fort Bragg would have likely been threatened and possibly lost to other military installations where the community had not protected their value and their local installation. Protecting Fort Bragg's vital military training areas for the first forces called to war should be a matter of pride for everybody in this room. Our past is a great legacy. This is where we are right now. It's a sign of continued success to see that we're here now today. We should close this with a couple of thoughts about the future. The Army's downsizing from approximately 450,000 active duty soldiers to a number that will likely be closer to 420,000, and some numbers say it could be as low as 360,000. I'm just going to use that first number. Let's put that into perspective. If the reduction is only 30,000 soldiers, and that only is a bigger number than you think, that's actually 3 divisions. Divisions are approximately 10,000 people, little tiny bit more, but that's the impact that another BRAC can have as we try to downsize. So if you think about that, we also have headquarters that are reorganizing. What we know now is Army Forces Command is reorganizing and consolidating multiple commands underneath them, and we don't know the full future or impact of that yet. This level of reduction and realignment increases the likelihood for formal base realignment and closure so the Army can reduce the unneeded infrastructure, facilities, and installation and apply more money to the warfighting forces. We should look at this first by recognizing that in every challenge of this nature, there's an opportunity. Now's the time to continue enhancing the military readiness of Fort Bragg while ensuring compatible development across our RLUAC area. We've done it before, we're doing it now. We'll continue to set the standards as we move forward because of the vision and determination of everyone in this room. Thank you for all that you do and you continue to do for our great community, because only through great people can great things be accomplished. Thank you very much.
Thank you to our Executive Director, Mr. Hansen, and Major General Aycock. I hope now you have more of a deeper understanding about our organization and our mission and the vital importance of RLUAC to our area. I will now move on to our next agenda item, our Fort Bragg update from Mr. Zach Odom, Master Planning.
Good morning, everyone. I appreciate everyone coming out here to Fort Bragg and visiting with us, and Vaughn, Mayor Anthony coming out, making this a great event to provide that understanding to our local community partners as well as leadership here at Fort Bragg of the importance of RLUAC and what it does for us. So I'm Zach Oldham. I'm the Chief of Master Planning Division here at Fort Bragg. Basically, I'm going to give you just a quick update on some things that are happening here and some impacts on the community, some other discussions that we're having to make sure that we get good things happening here at Fort Bragg and in North Carolina. So we're going to just quickly talk about just a quick overview of Fort Bragg, some projects upcoming, and some RLUAC impacts. General Aycock stole some of my thunder, but we'll get in there. We'll hit that up. So this is a great slide. I love this slide because this really shows you why Fort Bragg is called the center of the universe, as we like to say here. So Fort Bragg, currently has about just under 50,000 active duty soldiers here. And we serve a total population with our retirees and civilians and everything else, about 265,000 people. We are the 5th largest city in North Carolina. So it's a pretty big stat when you consider, you got Raleigh and Greensboro and Charlotte. To be number 5 is pretty good. We have, to General Aycock's point, $8 billion impact locally. That's actually up to about $10.7 billion economic impact a year. So even more of a reason why we like to champion through our federal partners in Congress and the House, as well as our state legislature, to make sure that we protect Fort Bragg and keep driving that to support our local economy. We have about 162,000 acres here between everything that we do. 145,000 of that is for training. As you know, we are the home of the Airborne and Special Operations Forces. This is where we make Green Berets. So this is a very important installation to the Army and to the National Defense Mission. Just alone, to include our partners, so they allow me to come on the Army base. I was a Marine for 10 years, but the Marines come up here all the time and do training. I'm sure any of us that live in the area, I live in Moore County, when the artillery's firing, we know 10th Marines is here. Fort Bragg provides the capability to conduct that training, not only for the Army mission, but all these other missions as well. Because down at Camp Lejeune, they have very restricted limits on training and explosives and things to that nature. So you can see there are 20,000 training events, and that's all DoD components. It's not just the Army. That's huge. That's a huge number. Additionally, we have about 50 million square feet of facilities that we manage here. About 12,000 real property assets, which about just under half of that is actually like buildings. 23 miles of rail, almost 1,500 miles of roads. So that's huge. That's a big impact to the local community. Additionally, we're always championing ICSAs, so intergovernment service agreements, and trying to bring in our local communities to make sure that our economic impact is impacting our local economy here, to serve our soldiers and their families and their children who attend the school systems, who do all these things, support us as civilians and all of that. So we're always interested in that. Also interested in always supporting what they call DSIP or other grant programs for infrastructure improvements. We work with our local partners, like Laurinburg-Maxton Airport, for some expansion that they want to apply for some grant monies. We try to support them as long as they're supporting our military mission. So kind of jump into the next slide. So one of the big things that I've talked about over the last couple of years, right, is to the impacts of the economy is our housing shortage when it comes to barracks and things of that nature. As you know, we've demoed about 12 barracks, which has kind of put us behind on where we can house soldiers, as well as we have a pretty large backlog of about 600 in our CDCs, Child Development Centers. This year, we were, after almost over 10 years, granted some conventional Army MILCON. So we were awarded that this year. So we will have one Child Development Center, which will be breaking ground in September, which will hold about 338 kids. So that'll take about 50% of our backlog that we can get for our children here and make it easier for the soldiers. And then we also have 2 MILCONs for barracks that were awarded. They'll be in design this year with construction starting in 27. And they will be helping keep our junior enlisted soldiers on post for that command and control. And upcoming this year, we'll probably have additional 35% designs for 2 extra barracks. Needless to say, that is awesome that we're getting these things, but we still have a large need on the community for childcare as well as housing. Even building these barracks, we're still well over 2,000 soldiers that are out on the economy over the next 3 to 5 years. So that's pretty big. So just real quick, I mean, as you know, we have a lot of road projects going on and some initiatives, and I'm just going to really hit the wave tops on a couple of them. The big one that everyone's been impacted, definitely Southern Pines area is impacted on, is the repaving of Manchester Road and widening of that, and work in our partnership with the NCDOT. They'll be, once it's all done, they'll be taking over the maintenance of those assets. So that should really greatly help keeping our training roads in better condition up to a DOT standard, making them safer, as well as our access from the Moore County side of the house over to Fort Bragg. So the latest update, as of Monday, we're on track to begin the next phase of our Manchester Road repaving, which will basically go from Morrison Bridge Road to Blues Road, and that will be a complete shutdown of the roadway. So, I would highly recommend those communities that are impacted, reach out and let your folks know that, hey, that will be completely closed on Manchester, so you'll have to look for alternate routes down 690, 2427, or some other ways. But At the end of the day, it will make it so much safer for our training areas, our soldiers, as well as our civilians and soldiers that live in Moore County coming in every day. So really looking forward to that. Hopefully over starting next year, we're aiming to start a major project at our All-American Expressway and our All-American ACP, which will result in our ACP being closed down for about 18 to 24 months. But this will take care of and address a few issues with maintenance of the bridge over a group of road, as well as some of the issues in the roadway. If you've ever came down All-American, it's kind of wavy and bumpy, so we're going to get rid of that and fix that. The visitor center, however, will still remain there and still be operational, and that's where you would still go to get your passes. But I say that all to say, it is a big period, and so you may see in your communities impacts to the other ACP access points, right? Because with that All-American being shut down, definitely going to drive a lot to Spring Lake, right, Mayor Anthony, and other entrances. So just be prepared for that over the next year. And obviously, the garrison will be putting out a lot of information out there to the community so that we can share that with everybody. And then a couple other future initiatives that we're really focused on or looking at is Quarter K, which is a 685 connector, basically from Greensboro down to Wilmington. Looking at getting that going and finalizing kind of the route that's going to happen. And then we're also looking at, the name is Western Bypass, we call it kind of Western Access. This is an access point that will help alleviate some traffic at Nursery Road coming from the Harnett County side with Harnett County's projected growth and developments, especially in the Anderson Creek area, as well as if you come to Spring Lake, in the mornings, it gets crazy over there. I know Mayor Anthony definitely knows I'm talking about leaving. This would help alleviate some of that and provide access to our Long Street ACP, as well as, critical to us, provide access to the Northern Training area, the ACP's off 690, and probably alleviate some Manchester Road traffic coming from Moore County in the mornings. I can tell you, I drive that every day coming from Carthage, and I will take 690 over going down to Manchester and Morrison Bridge. So. And then finally, this is what I was kind of talking about. So to General Aycock's point, 324 cases reviewed this year, 42 comment letters, and you can see all the historical stuff. So this is huge, right? So these are all encroachment opportunities or things that could impact Fort Bragg and training, flight paths, all these things that the RLUAC team does a great job of monitoring, sending out letters, and our community partners are great. They usually take our suggestions. So it's been great, but the RLUAC is so critical. I get 3 to 5 reviews a week from Vaughn to look at regard to zoning, towers. That's been a big one. One of the things that we're looking at on the plans, right, is, hey, I can put a 100-foot tower up, but if it's on a 2,000-foot elevation, what does that do, right? Because a lot of the land use plans just say 100-foot height restriction. Well, the elevation matters too. So that's something we're looking at. To Vaughn's point, we talked about the flight paths and the towers and the facilities and things like that. I mean, just this past week, we were working a solar farm, a recommended solar farm that someone's considering that would impact Pope Army Airfield, right? And make sure we have glare studies and the poles for the different things going out there recommend 150 feet, right? So making sure those things are evaluated. And then advance notice. There's some recommendations where developers are going to the local zoning boards. One example is Harnett County recently, some townhomes. They were using our easement because they bought land from someone we had an easement with. So we working through that and making sure that it's meeting all the real estate requirements and meeting this. And then it's right up against our housing area in Linden Oaks. So making sure that it's not infringing on our boundaries and our access. And then finally, additionally, the land use plans, like Vaughn said, RLUAC just drove Hope County, just going through their land use plans. We brought our environmental division in, master planning, other key stakeholders for Fort Bragg, from ranges and everybody else. To go through that, I just sat on the Moore County Land Use Plan Advisory Committee last year, so that was great. They just, I went to their commission meeting 2 weeks ago with how to proceed with some of the new state legislation that came out in regards to zoning and things like that. So we're working through that. And then additionally, we're working through installation, airfield compatible use zoning study right now. HQDA is doing it for us out of Aberdeen Proving Grants. We should hopefully have that this year, so that'll help give some new specifications there. That's pretty much all I got for Fort Bragg. If anyone's got any questions. Awesome. Great. Thank you very much for coming.
I have a mercifully brief report this. First thing, just thank you to everyone who has been sending in their annual membership contributions. I think I got an email from Glenda Dye with the COG the other day. I think we're about 77%. Today is only 30 days since I sent the invoices out. So that's really good. Everybody's being very diligent. I know the check's in the mail, BJ. We'll be sending out reminders to those who might not have seen the first emailed invoice. But if you needed a copy of that, or if you didn't get one and you know that you haven't paid yet this year, just let me know and I'll make sure you or your finance person gets a copy of that. So thank you very much. The other thing, if you recall, at the conclusion of the May meeting, I believe Dr. Newton made a motion for us to send a letter to the North Carolina Department of Military and Veterans Affairs expressing our concerns about the universe of bills that were in progress at that time, having to deal with local government land use planning and zoning matters, not any individual bill specifically. And so the direction was for RLUAC to prepare a letter outlining our general concerns about that and go through Department of Military and Veterans Affairs. Doug and Rick did a great job of making sure that got to the Secretary's office, and we had a meeting with them earlier this year. It was brought up in the Military Affairs Commission's recent committee meeting, and I believe we'll be going to make a brief presentation to the Military Affairs Commission at their meeting next week in Raleigh. I think, Mary Anthony, you're going to be coming with me. Are you, Dr. Newton? Maybe. We'll see. And we'll just be there to express our concerns, express our hope that we can work in a positive manner with Military Affairs Commission, with the legislature to ensure that our local government members around Fort Bragg, as well as our other military installations around the state, maintain the ability to work constructively both with their property owners and their communities, as well as the installations, to ensure that we have a compatible land use environment so that we can maintain, sustain the training and operations that are occurring at these very critical installations. So those were two general items. Also, just an update on where we are, what we did in the last quarter. Land use reviews. So the second quarter, 2025, 118 cases submitted. We actually a very quiet spring. Things were slowed down fairly considerably from the last few years. We're probably running a little bit under our annual total from the last 2 or 3 years, just where we are in the development cycle. 13 responses to cases. A couple of those in Pope Fields, APZ1 that we had to deal with. Those were resolved satisfactorily. And most of the others had to do with development of some of our noise awareness areas due to large caliber weapons training at Fort Bragg. And we typically have a disclaimer or a notice that we advise developers, property owners to provide on their subdivision plats or to their future buyers, just making sure that they're aware, because when you go out on a Sunday and looking at houses, you're not always aware that they're going to be shooting and flying low and smoke and all the fun stuff that goes along with that. So that's where we were last quarter. You can see the chart there for the last 12 months. Back in March, we had a really big spike, for the year. And it's been kind of steady over the summer as well. We're running 35 to 40 cases a month right now. Distribution of those, the big winner was the city of Fayetteville over the last quarter, 64 cases. Jerry was very busy. He needs more people. If anybody's listening, Jerry needs more people. Not a lot of comment letters went out. Again, we only had 13 comment letters, which is great. A lot of compatible development occurring. We do provide notice when somebody is building something in one of our areas that might have a high noise or otherwise that what they're doing, if it's commercial or industrial development in some of those areas that have high noise exposure. So that's great. That's compatible. So you get a letter for that as well. This is just a distribution of those. Again, 2 APZ1 issues, 9 in our PK noise zone. That's again that large caliber weapons training noise zone. 3 low-level aviation routes, and 1 APZ zoning compatibility issue. But again, fairly quiet over the spring, which is great because we had a pretty busy year last year. And I'll turn it over to Mayor Anthony.
Okay, just a few updates. We don't have a whole lot. As you heard, it's been a little slow. So again, to reiterate, most of our dues have been received. So if you have one, please help us continue the mission by paying your dues. Thank you, Hope Meals, for making sure that you took care of it. Next month's meeting is scheduled for Thursday, November 20th, tentatively at the town of Spring Lake. We'd love to welcome you to our newly remodeled boardroom for our next meeting. You all are more than welcome to join. And for our member body and board members, if you have any specific topic that you want to see discussed through RLUAC, please reach out to myself or to Vaughn so that we can go ahead and get these set up for our next meeting. If there are any speakers that you want to hear from, please let us know. And that is all I have. We move on to business items. All right. We will now entertain a motion to approve our minutes from our quarterly meeting from May 15th, 2025. I'll give you guys a moment to review them if you need. Do we have a motion? Okay. And second. Awesome. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Can you throw your hands up so we can make sure we see you all? Any against? Motion carries. All right, we'll give you a second to, if you haven't already reviewed the fourth quarter fiscal year 2024-2025 financial report. Would you like to go over that?
Yeah, I'll just go. So for the quarter ending June 30th, the fourth quarter of fiscal year 2024-2025, we began the quarter with a cash on hand of $16,767.41. We had receipts during that time period totaling $57,022.49. And I'd like to give Aberdeen the award for paying their dues early. Expenses for the quarter included $4,919 for our annual administrative fee for the Mid-Carolina Council of Governments, which has remained the same for 21 years now. Thank you very much, Mid-Carolina Council of Governments. Glenda Dye is great. She puts up with a lot from us, and she keeps the books very well. And then the management fees for January to June 2025 of $21,000 to Benchmark, which left us with a balance of cash on hand at the end of the fiscal year, June 30th, 2025, of $31,103.49.
Is there any discussion on that? All right, I'd like to call for the motion to approve our fourth quarter fiscal year 2024-25 RLUAC financial report. Commissioner Patel made the motion. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Locklear. Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? The motion carries. All right, we'll now move on to our member comments. If there's any of our members that have a few words to say, please come to the podium and be mindful of your time. Keep your remarks very short. Anyone? No one has anything to say after all of this amazing information. Vaughn? Well, I would like to make sure that we applaud Vaughn for all of the hard work and dedication that went into this meeting. We pushed him to the limits for this, and he responded accordingly. And I just want to thank General Acock. Did he step out?
He had to leave.
Okay. And I just want to remind you of one thing that he said that is critically important. This is the longest running RLUAC. Out of all RLUACs, we have the longest running one. And that, to me, deserves a round of applause. That's a big deal.
Well, good morning. I'm Dr. Newton. I am going to be able to share a little bit of what I do in my other line of work, but it's all one career, and that's working to help communities, help people, help individuals. And these are leadership lessons that I really do think are valuable, no matter what your role is, what your position is. Thank you to the mayors, to the elected officials, to those who are from the military, and for what you're doing. What I've found in teaching leadership for the University of Charleston, for those that don't know, it's every branch of the United States, and they're around the globe, and it's all year round. I've been doing it for 10 years. Started with Navy SEALs, it's moved into all branches, every branch. As they created branches, it includes those. I've learned a lot of lessons, but not just from that interaction that I have teaching their last class before they get their degree, but also with the idea that I've been able to be involved and help communities and be with people who have been doing tremendous things. So you have a packet that's going to give you a little bit of information, and I'm going to give you just a snippet of it too. Calling this a few apples, and that's paying homage to at least what Ancestry.com says is my cousin, 9 removed, Isaac. He took a simple thing that we all saw, and he learned something from it. I think that we have items around us all the time that we don't even pay attention to, that if we stop and think about it, we would realize how significant some things are. I'm going to intertwine a little of that and work us through that. There's a recurring theme that's going to be happening here. Are we creating the space as leaders for others to grow and be better? Are we creating the space for our communities to be better? Do we lead as if it all matters? Not all of it does. Do we serve as if you're helping someone that you love? Do we behave as if your mom or your dad or your wife or your husband or whoever that person is, someone that you respect and that loves you, was watching? And to give yourself and others grace. We're not perfect. Just that version of those people I said before, check in with them, they'll remind us, and so will many others. You can't really lead a community, an organization, or team until you know yourself. Leading yourself is a really big item. I don't know how to make some of these points really stick in just a minute or two, but I want you to just think as we're going through this, jot stuff down. It's recorded. You'll be able to listen to it again. But until you understand who you are and whose you are, you are not going to be effective in your leadership. You really aren't. You have to be honest with yourself. You need to have these foundational things. I have up there, I actually went through quite an exercise in working through this. You don't have to go to that extent, but the idea of really understanding who you are becomes very important as we work through items. Here's a way that I want to think about it, a couple things. There are some who say, I'm a leader now. Just got elected. I'm a leader now. I just got promoted. Positional power is not leadership. That's pretty significant. Maybe why put it in a big spot there. But that doesn't mean that your position doesn't give you a great opportunity to lead and to do better and things for those all around you and your organizations and your community. I like this idea, and that is, okay, if I have to think before I decide and act, one of the things that may help me understand a little bit about that is, what will I try for? What am I going to strive for? Hey, what will I lie for? I remember someone challenging me, a 3-star, challenging me on this, saying, oh, you will lie, but you say you don't? Oh, you will. What would you lie on? Dude, what do you fight for? What will you cry for? I don't cry. Oh, yeah, I do now. What will you live for? And then even, what will you be a light for? Staying with a really detailed image. I was going to do a little bit more, and I thought, no, I like that idea. Here's another way that you, in looking at those bites of an apple, little things, we're used to the idea of line up, get in line, know your position. We get used to the idea that we better be pretty good at memorizing our lines. General Aycock talked about some of what he's done in the theater that he's been so involved in. They have to memorize their lines. I have well over 1,000 students that I've helped in 10 years, and it's one-on-one mentoring. And repeatedly, I hear them say, yes, but we're not allowed to do that. You aren't? How is that? Have you yourself created the space to let some of that happen? The idea of, we have the ability to do much more than we think. There are people who say, I'm old enough, I'm not going to learn anything, there's nothing to learn. Oh, yes, there is. There always is. Not talking about the neuroplasticity, but there is so much that we have yet to learn if we're willing to learn. That's the idea that you physically can change your brain. It's crazy what we can do and how we can, that physical thing, and work the mind. But we also set a line sometimes. We know when to lead. We now also, as good leaders, know when to follow. We really need to know that. And I'm going to put it there. There are times you have to cross the line. And then I just found it kind of important to say this. Don't argue with a fool. The line of folly. Continuing with this idea of think before you act and decide, very, very concerted. You can't know or respect your personnel if you don't get to know them. You really can't. And, by the way, Boyatzis talks all about that in resonant leadership. And we never really get to know who we're dealing with. Even if we think we do, we never really get to know. The Newton corollary on that. And I think we all know that to be true. But if we work with this idea that we respect others, there's so much to this idea. There are times that we have to be very harsh, but we can do it in a very direct focus, not to the individual. And then I have really found this last question to be pretty significant. Leaders, we tend to think we have people who are telling us, and it's not that we're trying to get the same comments and thoughts all the time from individuals. We ask for diversity of thoughts, but sometimes we need to ask or have somebody collect the answers to this question. What aren't we talking about that we really should? I've done it in the city of Fayetteville. I've done it in a lot of places. And often, it's not just the quiet one in the room, but it's the person who's unwilling to ever speak who will tell somebody else, we really need to talk about this. So those are just a couple of the bites of that. I want to move into the academic world for just a couple minutes, give you some neat terms and how they actually apply into the work that we do and why I think it's pretty important. I'm giving you andragogic instruction and a little bit of pedagogic. We, as adults, don't like to be talked down to. Bears repeating, but I won't. Often leaders talk down You don't have to. You really don't know who's in your audience. You don't know who all knows what. Andragogic instruction is that idea is we're all adults here. Let's behave and treat each other that way. Pedagogic, I talk down to them. Most instruction that we give is, you need to learn this, so I'm teaching you. So most of the time you'll hear pedagogic. But andragogic is a version of what I'm doing now, and if this were expanded into a full conversation, as it often is in areas and communities I help, in organizations, this leads to a lot of conversation. Second one, case study versus positional writing. Your defense. What are we doing here? Most of us defend our position. Case study is that idea that you actually need to look at a lot of things from a lot of different angles. We do that often in the academic world, not to change our foundational points, but to realize that there's more than just defending our position. It's a significant one. Socratic questioning. At the back of your sheet, you'll see something that I didn't get that attribute that I needed to. The source or the reference for that is Paul and Elder, but I wanted to give you a little bit more on Socratic questioning. If you remember Socrates or heard of Socrates from your education of years ago, how he had the students tell him by asking questions until he found what they didn't know, and then he would dig deep, and it made him strong. That and critical thinking. We say we are critical thinkers, but boy, do we miss things. There's a lot of gaps of information that we miss. Plexi formation of leaders. Plexiglass. It's put on top of something to make it stronger, more durable, and how it hits. But the plexi formation happens because it's layer upon layer. If you've ever seen plexiglass shatter, it shatters into 1,000 shards, depending on where it got hit, the impact from it. The plexi formation of leaders, every single interaction that you have with somebody is adding to that. Just like the way we're designed with emotion, always as a filter first, to the ability to think, so the amygdala go into the frontal lobe. Similarly, the plexi formation, every single interaction that you have with others impacts, and every one that you have, whether or not you realize it. I'm going to go into the next three, and I'm going to spend just a little bit more time on this. I have an honor coin that was developed a while ago, and it's not something that I give out lightly, but it's to those who have really done something significant. You'll see within that design, and let me get to it, that I have the Fibonacci sequence shown in there. For those who are unfamiliar, in nature, it's everywhere. It's absolutely everywhere. There's a lot to this, but for now, what I want you to hear is you didn't get your position like that turtle. You didn't get your position up there by yourself. Fibonacci sequence. Similarly, we are a part of a system that has made us into who we are because of those who preceded us. We have the opportunity to expand and make it greater in a lot of ways. And there are individuals who do that from time to time. Let me just illustrate some of the benefit of that for a minute. Can our executive director join me for a minute? I didn't ask you to do this, but it's not as impromptu as it may seem at the moment. The city of Fayetteville has, and I have looked at the work, culmination of work that Vaughn has done for our community. And this is for him. It's an honor coin. General Al Aycock received one for all that he's done over the years. And Vaughn, I'm going to have you hold that. You can open it. And when we talk about it, you'll understand it just a little bit more. But to me, I want to just point out the value and importance of each person is rarely understood. Recipients of this award recognize the balanced need for self, organization, and community as they perform their duties with dignity, humility, focused attention, and have that stewardship mindset to make our community better for the time that they've been involved. This honor coin is not for sale, but it is earned and gladly given to each recipient. So Vaughn, on behalf of the city, Fayetteville, and personally me, and the impact one person can make, I want to thank you. So here's the certificate that I won't read because this guy keeps me on a tight timeline of conversations. But this is a certificate to tie to it. Thank you much.
Thank you, sir.
That coin, and what you just saw demonstrated, was not without a little predetermined thought. That coin has a star in the middle. Each person receiving that is a star, as are you. That coin is perfectly balanced with a whole bunch of things happening. However, and that coin can actually flip and spin. So in the whirlwind of activity, that is balanced on the individual who knows who they are. They have worked through that idea of not just self-worth, but who they are as a leader, how they help communities, and how they help all those around them. If Vaughn would dare to do it, he could take it out and he could turn it upside down and spin it. The significance of that was also there. You don't make things happen by yourself, so don't focus only on yourself. That spin doesn't happen unless you're the one that has boots on the ground, that you're the one who's there doing it. Understand a little bit about now the impact of one, the significance of that, and the plexi formation of leaders. I showed you this before, but for those who aren't familiar with that sequence, it is literally everywhere. It's in our flowers. It is everywhere. And it's been setting right there in front of our eyes for a long time. Come down to just a couple points. I'm only going to hit a few on the slide, as I only really have time to hit a few on most everything that you're seeing. Be noble, be strong, be true. I've got 4 points that I think are pretty interesting ones here. I mentioned this one in a meeting that I had before I was here with the city. Fuzzy logic. We are so accustomed to leaders to say, this is how it's going to end. This is the way it's going to work out. This is borrowed term from the computer programmers and mathematics. No, we don't. We may know kind of what we're working toward, but we don't have it. But we have a concept we can work toward. Fuzzy logic allows that to happen, and almost every app that you have had a version of fuzzy logic when they said, hey, I want something that will do this. I don't know how to do it, but let's figure it out. As leaders, you can figure it out with your teams. Next one, create the good and work together to achieve the great. Couple down, I mentioned it before, generalized self-efficacy. This is not being braggadocious. It's just knowing that you can be good at the things you do because you actually take the time to be good at the things that you do. And then we're all leaders. We really are. Every person, regardless of position, is a leader in so many more ways than we know about. I want to park on that first of those 3 that I mentioned just a minute ago. Be noble, strong and true. You can look it up in a whole bunch of any versions, but I wrote it here. In Isaiah 32:8, it says, out of blasting and blasting and blasting going on, and there's this one line, this one sentence that's in there. But the noble make noble plans, and noble deeds they stand. There's a lot of versions to this, but let me park on that. The noble man, the noble woman what is your character? If they, in understanding what it means to be a noble person who puts together things for the betterment of others in their planning, in their actions, and then they can stand and say, yeah, I was a part of that. Others don't need to know it was me, but yeah, I was a part of that. That the noble person makes noble plans. And by their deeds, the things that they do, they stand. If someone said, when I think of a noble person, I think of, could they put your name in there? As leaders of our organizations, of our communities, I think that is really something significant to strive for. Not that we ever have to hear it, but do you have a character that's high quality? You can read it yourself, how each one, wisdom, understanding, that you do the right thing, even if it's hard. That you are just, and you give some people grace even if they don't deserve it, realizing that's probably how they view us at times too. Do you do it with humility and with this mindset of the stewardship that I'm entrusted with this, whatever, for a period of time? I'm going to do the best I can for it. Be noble. I have the picture up there intentionally of a horse, because sometimes people confuse someone who is meek versus someone who is weak. That horse is controlled strength. In our leadership, we have the opportunity to have very controlled strength. Some things people have said recently about my work. But I want to give you something that just 2 days finished out. Just finished teaching, start a new group next week. And I actually had one send me a note, hey, aren't we meeting tonight? I said, no, next week. Another one yesterday said, I really want to thank you for what you've done. I had 2 students. I think these are a really good illustration of a contrast of how people in different leadership roles have room to grow. I'm sort of hiding it by saying he's more than a Navy SEAL. But he just wrote, yeah, when people talk about me and my brand, my personal brand, I know who I am. I'm an aggressive mentor. I tell my people, you give me 120%, you do the absolute best you can. You'll make some mistake, you'll do, and then a whole bunch of other things. And then I say, back it up just a little bit. And when he talked about who he wants to emulate, who he wants to be like, he said, I want to be just like General Pat. Okay. He's one that I got to share a bit about the war horse and how that war horse submits to the rider. And there are times he knows he has to do that. But personally, in knowing himself, can he control that himself first? Controlled strength. Then this next one, again, he's much more than what I just wrote, but for the general purposes, he's an Army engineer diver, course leader. Teaches people how to do a lot of things. Both of them have been on multiple deployments. You remember when the plane had to do an emergency landing in the Hudson River? That's the fellow that he wants to be like. And he talked about a word, phrase that I hadn't heard it used this way before, the startle effect. We all know it. It's when the amygdala gets overcharged up here and we can't think. Some say it's you've learned how to put a person on their heels by what you say. Some say you go in neutral and you can't think for a minute. Well, again, that actually does happen. Term, startle effect. You've had it. Something causes instant fear. And what do you do next? What do you do? He, over the years, has gotten to the point that he, in a fraction of a second, knows it, recognizes it, and moves on. he's teaching that to thousands of people. What he himself has been through would be enough to never want to do anything anymore. But what he's doing is another example of a leader who was able to talk to and help in a couple ways. But this idea of what he wants to be, calm and steady, not everybody's going to appreciate that. Now, which of those two would we want? I want them both. You see how uniquely God has made each one of us and how we have the ability to focus in and help our organizations, our communities, and the things that we do. There are just a couple more slides, and we're not going to go. I'm going to park it right here. So in the midst of the storms, breathe. A couple of you know the reason of this picture. I'm not going to share it. Boy, was there a lot going on when that happened. Not only was my windshield wiper going super fast to get through the rain, but I was seeing off to the sides a rainbow. There were others who were careful on the road, but never realized what was really there for their view. There are times that we get so busy in what we're doing, so nose down, that we can't look up and recognize the big picture, the big view. So thank you for the opportunity to present a few apples on leadership.